And good evening and welcome to our live stream about the potential for severe weather over the next few days. If you're joining us brand new, lovely to have your company. If you're one of our returning supporters, thank you so much for giving up your time to join us. Anyway, we've got lots to talk about, so let's just hop into it because there is bucket loads going on. So let's just quickly review the current satellite picture and radar, courtesy of Windy, of course. We can see here thick cloud cover covers the northeast and the northern Tasman Sea and southern Coral Sea associated with this trough and the developing system, whatever it ends up to be. Who cares what badge you get it, but in the end, it's going to be a pretty nasty system in terms of wind. Rainfall at this stage, the jury's still out. The Bureau has put out a pretty good heads up flood advice or flood watch, just to be careful, I guess, because these systems are pretty notorious in basically doing what they want to do. But at this stage, the guidance was that most of the heavy rain will stay well off the coast. And it's really going to be the winds that are going to be pretty problematic for this system. But we'll look at the freshest data right now. We'll see what it's got to say. We'll also look at what the potential for rain is going to be. And we'll look at a very interesting meteorological phenomenon that's going to happen with this system, or it's forecast to happen with this system anyway, which is incredibly rare and doesn't normally happen in the subtropics like it's potentially going to happen. And we'll touch base that once we get through the data. Anyway, so we can see looks pretty good in terms of, that thick upper cloud cover shows there's quite strong convection happening there, and just looks absolutely amazing. You can see that very strong northwesterly upper divergence, those winds blowing that dead dry air away to the southeast, which is going to help the system obviously intensify and maintain pretty strong intensity and suck up air from the surface as this system does amplify or get stronger over the next period of time. Okay, well, we'll see. I think at this stage you'll probably find that the only one not yet will be still EC. So we'll go into wind gusts like usual, and we'll focus on the next sort of 24 hours, and we'll give you an idea about when action is supposed to start. I'll just see here. I don't think EC is updated, but it might make a liar of me tonight. No, updated 7 hours ago, so we're still not in that territory yet. So we'll go to good old our global friend GFS. So here's GFS's take on it about an hour and a half ago when it updated, or 2 hours ago. And for those who are new, GFS is an American global forecasting system model that is run out of basically the American version of the Bureau of Meteorology. So over there it's called NOAA, if I remember off the top of my head, that part of it anyway. But I've seen recently they're actually taking a lot of their functions back and putting it back under one domain now, and closing all their old sort of websites down, ancillary websites down, and going back to one focus, which is interesting. I think that's a bit of the cost-cutting measures or something in place, but here we go. So at the moment, we can see the trough is well off the coast, extending some sort of gusty winds back towards the coast, and obviously that rainfall we can see here definitely off, but starting to drag in that gusty northeasterly fuel that it needs to actually intensify. And so we can see GFS here basically has that trough sliding down, and it's done it again actually. And let's put the isobars back on. I don't know why it does it every time. It just like it forgets me, which is easy to do, but we'll do it here. So GFS is obviously indicating here it's 1013 low, but it's pretty weak low, so it's probably more definitely a deep trough at this stage, or a developing coastal trough. You can see the bulge in the isobars. There's really no discrete closed circulation here. It's more a circulation within a trough itself, but it could be, courses for courses, I guess we'll see. And just a reminder, those people who may be joining us fresh, these lines in here, these isobars, you can see 1013 digitally added by Windy with their model. What it connects areas of what equal low pressure. Doesn't necessarily mean that it is a low. That's just what their software sort of identifies as potentially. We'll look at the system generally. We'll look for a low level circulation center or some sort of vorticity that's occluded, which basically means it has its own circulation, really, to keep an idea whether it's a low or not. But we can see here moving into tonight, again, that really is developing quite strongly, especially on the east and northeastern side, of course, but that's where all the fuel's coming from. Getting down to possibly a low there. You can see that now there's a pretty much a discrete circulation. You can see the winds are sort of circular around itself, but still not that, significant in terms of only 1,007, but closer to the coast. So GFS has sort of changed its trajectory a little bit since this morning and has actually brought that system in a bit closer. You can see the trough now bulging right down. So where these isobars are bending down, that's the trough of low pressure. So you can see it extends right down now to the Victorian border and past. You can see on the southern side this sort of southerly and southeasterly flow developing as it sucks into the trough. And of course, on the northeastern side here and the eastern side, this massive burst inflow of warm, humid, moist air, which is going to really help explode. And if I was to zoom out for you, you can see that air is coming from way out in the western South Pacific, way out near Fiji, in some respects, in Vanuatu. That's just how significant this system is going to be into sucking in the air from middle of nowhere. You can see it coming way out, wrapping around from a high to the East New Zealand. So pretty impressive, no doubt, for a vacuum cleaner. Okay, so let's get going into early Tuesday morning now. You can see again, really no occluded sort of circulation yet, but still starting to wind up. But GFS is now sort of focusing everything on the southeastern and eastern side, which is interesting because this morning it did have the western side a bit stronger. So we'll see what happens when there's an upper system due sometime during late Tuesday, early Wednesday, that is expected to really ramp this thing up into fire it up. So we'll see what it does. You can see now that it's starting to wrap around early Tuesday morning. You can see here really deepening now 999, and really now it starts to have that occluded sort of circulation. You can see it wrapping around itself pretty close to the coast, but still the inner circulation of that, whatever it's going to be called, a low, it's really not on the coast, which is what a true east coast low will be, but it's pretty close to the coast, so it may tick the boxes. But you can see the back end of this trough fitting into the low, and you can see the northern end of the trough here. So you can see the sort of direction it's going to go. You can see by the isobars are bulging down to the south of the system, and you can see how it extends the trough way back up to the north. And if I was to zoom out again, it's this other low here that's going to create some pretty significant and rare meteorological conditions in the Tasman Sea if it does come off. So we're watching that very closely just to see whether it actually robs from this system or actually does what we think it's going to do. And we'll talk about that in a second, but we'll get on with still the focus of GFS. And so this is tomorrow morning, you see here. And again, it starts to unwind a little bit, and then it starts to rewind again. So it's really not making its mind up. But you can see here, it really does get close to the coast. And you can see then as this sort of circulation hits the coast, you can see it starts to wobble and unwind a bit. And that's the result of friction, and the low interacting with the coastline does cause quite a bit of disturbances. That beautiful sort of inner machinery that the lows like to have. They like things to be very finely tunedly balanced, and any sort of disruption that does cause this sort of wobble and elongation. You can see the back end of this, the trough of the low feeding right in from a long way away. And the interesting thing is I'm expecting this is going to pretty ramp up the rainfall forecast from GFS significantly. And the reason is because you can see this northeasterly feed full of moist, fat, plump Coral Sea and West South Pacific air pouring into the southern side of this and getting squeezed the life out of it by this low. Is going to be dumping bucket loads, and it looks like the focus is across Sydney and the Illawarra on GFS's most recent update for sure. And that definitely would increase any potential rainfall in terms of those areas. You can see here in the north coast areas and even in the Hunter, they're going to be under a drier southwest to westerly flow, so they won't get as much in terms of rainfall. So again, it's just going to be really about position. Going into Tuesday night now, you can see it really starts to unwind as it hits the interacts with the coast and really detaches itself from the infeed. The infeed now is pushing through that northern south coast and sort of southern Illawarra, so that's where the greatest rainfall will be. And there should still be some scuddy sort of showers pushing up. But one of the things you'll notice straight away is that the winds are not forecast to be anywhere near as strong on GFS, that is. But don't forget that GFS is a very low res model, so it does smooth out data quite a lot. So don't take this as oh my God, the winds aren't going to be anywhere near as bad as they are. Again, it doesn't mean the rain's going to be the same either, because it's pretty much smooth. So you can see here it is really unwinding now and moving out. By Wednesday morning, it's bumping back out towards the mid-Tasman, and the circulation has gone very loose and sloppy and quite wide. You can see that again And if we were to zoom out, I'm pretty much sure there's the other low's gone. So that's interesting. Um, we'll see what the other models are saying. So that forecast low that was going to sort of come and do a bit of a dance with this low in the Tasman has just disappeared. And you can see here on the northern side of it, which is where the low is the close to this low trough, whatever it is, end up being at this stage. It's more a trough than it really is a low. You can see quite very much not a inner circulation whatsoever. There's a burst of convergence and the air squeezing together. You can see by that what these wind streams wrapping into each other, but really the lack of anything on the southern side here says quite clear that's more a trough than it is anything else. But still, this is just one take on it, just one view on it. Doesn't mean that's going to be the case. This is just how GFS is seeing it. It's still maintaining those pretty gusty winds, but nowhere near as strong or severe as originally forecast, especially this morning. It was quite strong. A bit of a bulge in the isobars down here, which suggests that there is going to be something developing down here, whether that's that secondary low that has been flagged and talked about. If it's not, we'll get to see, but really you can see where the low is about to travel anyway. You can see how it's extending a trough right down to the southeast, which means within probably about 18 to 24 hours, this will start to head that way, and goodbye to this system. But at this stage, probably just some gusty sort of scuddy showers at this stage for half of the coast of Sydney anyway, and the other half will be under a drier southwesterly and colder flow, mind you. And then it starts to wobble away. And then this secondary system, which is one we're talking about here, trough, secondary vorticity, secondary circulation, secondary low, all these things are being talked about, and that's we'll show you a video in a minute about an effect called the Fujiwara effect, which is named after a Japanese meteorologist / climate scientist who identified in very rare circumstances that vorticities, low level circulation centers, or lows, if they're developed, can tend to actually rotate around each other, and this potentially could enhance a period of quite severe weather for the coast if it does. And here at this stage, you can see it's basically heading straight towards the Illawarra and Wollongong, so that's definitely going to be interesting to see how the model definitely deals with this. But you can see how the low is now well out to the Tasman, only harming some fish. And you can see here, Sydney is under a very dry, gusty southwesterly flow, and the south coast and sort of eastern, northeastern Victoria will be definitely getting on the rain. Let's pop in onto Thursday and see what that other secondary system does. Here it comes as it wobbles up. And you can see them dancing around each other here. There's one little sort of air vorticity over here and one over here, and they're basically wrapping around each other like ballet dancers or ice skaters. And here it comes, and it's just going to miss everybody. It's going to clip the coast maybe, and you can see then sort of dancing around each other, and away it goes off into the netherworld and end over. So interesting times there if GFS comes off. But again, that dancing low or Fujiwara effect doesn't really going to mean or impact us much at all. You can see it all stays off the coast. And so really, essentially, the greatest impacts for GFS and this system is really from Tuesday tomorrow and through to probably sort of Wednesday lunchtime. And you can see very quickly as that sort of Fujiwara starts to kick in, the winds kick away into Wednesday night really, and just we come under that sort of drier southwesterly flow for the rest of the season until the whole system then disappears off to NZ. All right, let's go and have a look at Icon next, because that's on the list. So Icon again has pretty much what everybody else has got at this stage, this developing trough slash lows slash whatever it ends up to be, bulging down. You can see here the eye already extends the trough down to the Victorian border. You can see that off the coast today and radars if anybody's been paying attention to it. You can see a steady stream of showers, and there was a bit of lightning off there earlier before. That's definitely the trough intensifying, and of course that's going to get kicked into high gear once that upper trough and a really patch of old cold upper air comes across and really enhances the system. You can see here with Icon definitely trying to develop a really pinwheel type system there. You can see almost a very tight circulation there, but not impacting the coast. But again, is that a Tasman low, is it East Coast low, is it trough? Who really cares in this stage what badge it gets? What it is it's staying off the coast, which is a pretty good sign for most of those people in those areas. You can see very much just clipping that sort of Foster to Seal Rocks, Port Stephens area now. And then as it starts, the upper trough starts to make its presence known in the west and starts to come this way, you can see the low starts to retrograde and push back towards the coast. Now this is where it gets pretty nasty in terms of the anywhere between Port Stephens and sort of the Illawarra for winds. It's really down to 993, and that's probably at some stage there. That's probably an east coast low in definition. Although I mean it's secluded, it's got its own circulation, and it's actually scraping along the coast, which is what east coast lows are supposed to do. But it only lasts for not even 12 hours before it goes into that sort of hybrid type looking system that we had back in May, where you can see a small circulation here embedded in this little larger trough wafting into it. And before anybody screams, it's low. There's quite a disconnect here between the actual flow to the south and then the low's own circulation. It's quite obvious with anybody's eyes watching this. Big patch of orange there is definitely a distant connection between the two systems. But still, that's those winds and even an icon there are pretty nasty. Do they get across the coast? Actually, I might turn on the forecasted weather so you can actually see what the winds are. So you can see here they gradually increase from that sort of mid-20s early Tuesday morning, and throughout the day by lunchtime they're really up into the 40s already, which is the severe category. Newcastle's only 50 knots there already, and Sydney and Wollongong been both pop into above the severe category, and Newcastle stays just below that sort of damaging or destructive wind category, but still pretty nasty winds. But thankfully it's not as strong as it was this morning, which had them into 50s plus knots. Now we'll get to see exactly what it does as that upper trough does approach and see what it does with this low. Wollongong there, nearly 50 knots on the return flow. Pretty nasty, 987 low just off the coast. You can see it wobbling around. And you can see it then starts to retrograde again back towards the west. And you can see generally how the whole screen goes orange and yellows and reds, and which are just wind just increases exponentially, just almost like overnight. You can see those pinks are all the elevated areas, and that's basically that shear in that levels impacting those high elevated areas, and then a bit of downslope acceleration. That's the stuff as it gets over the Great Dividing Range and then flows into the low, which is why east of the low you can see quite strong winds, and to the west of the low there's not much. But then you watch as that upper trough does approach early Wednesday, and you watch the winds just increase everywhere across New South Wales. Look at that. That is just incredible, to almost severe across the whole of that picture there. Really what you're looking at is anything in that sort of, we don't want Mudgee, sorry. Anywhere in that sort of pinky color is almost 40 knots. You can see that whole area, go away, is covered almost in that severe category, which is like 40 knots and above. That is just incredible, the amount of air that's been sucked in. You can see here the trough is detached from the low, whatever it's called, Tasman, East Coast low, whatever, quite clearly now, and it's actually ploughing into the south coast with a little bit of return flow, but really the circulation is by itself. So no sign of this other sort of circulation yet. We'll zoom out and we'll see if that does come. Look at the effects of the Great Dividing Range here. You can see a bit of a leeway and then whack as those winds get wrapping. Just incredible in terms of the whole dynamics of this for Icon. Very impressive from a meteorological perspective anyway. Just wow. And then you can see again, there's that Fujiwara effect coming in there. You can see that vorticity slash whatever it is, Tasman low, just spinning up in the trough, whatever term you want to give it. And it starts as it'll dance, and that's definitely as a consequence of that upper trough moving across in that cold air and this very moist, unstable, this trough well to the south here, which is now more aligned sort of east-west. And you can see it here, 998 here, and that part of the trough, and then like 989 up there, just two complete separate sensors. And then you can see the dance as they spin around each other quite, gracefully. And this is where it gets interesting, is exactly what the impacts for us. So we're going to zoom back in towards the coast and just see how this impacts. A bit too far. I always get the wrong wheel turn. Okay, so we can see here, this is that circulation. It's probably not really truly low, because you can see there's no real circulation center in terms of wind speed, but you can quite clearly see it's some sort of disturbance or some sort of vorticity. This low up here, Tasman low, whatever it is definitely reacting in response to it. And you can see here the Fujiwara effect in full swing. You can see how they rotate around each other. quite gracefully. And then you can see then the difference between GFS and Icon at this stage is that the low vorticity, even sort of trough, I don't know what you call this, but anyway, actually pushes a lot closer to the coast than GFS had it. Remember, GFS had it sort of scooting past, and you can see here actually clipping the coast, and that will definitely bring a burst of severe weather in terms of showers, pretty gusty showers, but more like that damaging winds probably is the more the probability. But you can see definitely there's going to be some good showers just on it, but you can see also along the coast, and you've got this drier southwesterly flow too, which will sort of strip a lot of the moisture out. So it'll be just pretty very exposed coastal areas that will probably get some decent thing out of that. But there'll be definitely some water spouts out to sea, if not some tornadic water spouts as well, because of just the vorticity and the bulge here. Whether it turns out to be a low or it turns out to be just a vorticity or just trough, whatever thing it is definitely going to be causing some worldly spinny things at the surface there out to off the coast. Hopefully conditions will be clear enough so we can see it, but I doubt very much. But they might even see some close inshore waters as well, close to the coast, depending on how close that gets. You can see it then sort of surge way up, and then off she goes to visit NZ and its relatives out there, which is pretty much what GFS had as well. All right, let's go pop back to see what Axis is now doing with this system. And Axis, away we go. So very much the same as the start. What we've seen so far in terms of that trough bulging down and picking up that really deep easterly, northeasterly feed. You can see again, no real low there at this stage, even though the software likes to put like a digital label on it, but there's really no occluded circulation. It's just a very deep coastal trough at this stage. Not far off below there, but you can see again its timing is a little bit further south than what Icon had it. Maybe I don't know. It's splitting hairs this time now. You can see though on the southeastern and eastern side, pretty nasty inflow from that east and northeasterlies. You can see the winds thankfully just staying just off the coast, but you can see then as it does wobble back towards the coast in response to that approaching system, you can see the winds really increase, and that's it pretty much looks like it did this morning in terms of that the outer bands now pushing along the coast between basically Port Stephens or Seal Rocks and down through to the sort of the northern south coast and maybe even to the central south coast. Looking at that, and you can see those numbers there are actually the wind gusts as recorded, as forecast or modelled. Pretty nasty stuff. 46 knots at Mascot Airport, which means it's going to be a lot higher at the coast. And if we were to zoom in, which we will have a quick closer look a bit later after we sort of this regional look, we'll then get a bit of a macro look. Pretty nasty, and then just sits there wobbling around. And really starting to unwind again, much like Icon did actually have as well. And I think GFS had the same. So they're really all going with this sort of this vorticity, low trough, whatever we want to call it, does definitely wobbles, retrogrades back towards the coast as that upper system approaches from the west and sort of sucks it in. And then once it gets close to the coast, it does tend to unwind. There's that Fujiwara effect, or the other vorticity low, whatever it's going to turn out to be, coming into picture already. A lot earlier than the other two had it, so that's going to be interesting. You can see here it's actually pretty nasty, nearly up to 90 knots there, which is category 3 cyclone strength. That's pretty nasty in terms of that, and thankfully it's out there where I don't think Norfolk Islands there isn't. I think it's up here a bit further maybe, but nowhere near sort of land or any sort of populated centres out there, because that will be pretty savage. Again, you can still see those gusty winds right on the coast into Wednesday. And as that Fujiwara effect starts to happen, they sort of gracefully spin around each other. Axis still maintains a pretty nasty southerly flow. And then you can see, pretty much like Icon had, the whole state gets covered in pretty gusty, strong winds, up to severe winds in many places, as their systems spin around each other and the upper trough comes across and really boosts it and kicks them up. And again, it's a more defined circulation than we've seen on the other two at this stage as it approaches the coast, and that could be some pretty nasty weather that does happen. These sort of mesoscale macro lows, whatever you want to call them, these they can cause pretty serious weather on a local scale as they cross the coast. If it does, we'll keep an eye on that now. Um, and the Tasman low, sort of, who knows, like a multi-centered low, and it does pretty much what GFS has. It sails harmlessly past. It may give a burst of sort of gusty winds right on that very exposed coastal edge. But you can see Sydney winds don't change much from that sort of mid to high 30s. And then away it spins around each other and even misses out. It may just clip sort of Port Stephens, but even then, so the worst winds thankfully stay offshore. There's a real burst of nasty winds left, and then it starts to head off to that southeast for its final hurrah, and then rapidly clearing after that, as it's been forecast for the whole time. All right, let's quickly check EC and see if it's updated, and then we'll go and have a look at some of the rainfall forecasts and see what they've changed since this morning. Again, the great focus on the forecast or the models this morning was actually the winds, not so much the rain. But we'll see if that's changed. Let's see if EC has updated 20 minutes ago. Beautiful. So as we've been waffling, it is updated. So good. So this is going to be the situation as it started play. So pretty much what Access, Icon, and GFS has had as well. Just a difference in sort of location. Again, EC has that trough just a little bit closer, but general southerly movement as opposed to what we saw before. Definitely a low there at that stage, whether it's an East Coast low, Tasman low. I guess we'll see in the washout. It starts to then retrograde back towards the west, but you can see it elongates, so it's definitely not that anymore. I don't know, what do you call those when they elongate like that? Like that's not a sort of vortice anymore. It's becoming more a trough, but who knows? Who cares what labels you give it? It's still going to be a pretty nasty system in terms of winds. But looking at the way those winds are at the moment, it's definitely not going to be that good for rainfall like EC had this morning. Definitely up around that Port Stephens sort of southern Foster sort of Steel Rocks, northeast sort of Hunter, definitely some good rain there. And as this elongates, as that upper trough approaches, that outer band of winds comes ashore. Look at that. Definitely some good rain here because you can see why. It's because this, and you can see that other circulation there is now coming into picture as well. Because this whole fetch of this northeasterlies and easterlies are then wrapping around and focusing basically into the Illawarra and Sydney. So that definitely will be, I'm expecting that's going to be pretty wet from, I haven't even looked yet, but pretty wet from, I'd say, there, probably not southerlies. Tuesday afternoon, let's see, from about 2 or 3 o'clock, we should start to see stuff increase. And then by Tuesday night, I think it's going to be pretty hectic as that extends back towards the coast. And then we head into overnight into Tuesday. You can see it just wobbling around and hanging there and not doing a lot, which is interesting because the other two models didn't really have that as much. They had it sort of starting to put away, but just pummeling the coastal strip and quite a few of the inland areas as well. So you can see here, if we were to zoom in, that's well into the severe category right across basically most of Sydney, which is what not included on the Bureau's severe weather warning at this stage. So we'll be getting a very close look at very soon at what they expect, because normally about 8 o'clock, so very shortly they'll be putting out, they're normally updated it, but I mean, they normally put it 24 hours. So I mean, EC does actually have, potentially severe winds in Greater Sydney by 3 or 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So well within that 24-hour period. So if they're believing EC is the model that they're running with, then we'll see definitely a severe weather warning out within the next hour and a half. And that normal 8 p.m. sort of time slot was when they tend to do it. But yeah, EC is probably, out of all the ones we've seen so far, is probably the worst in terms of potential weather for the Illawarra and Sydney and so that Central Coast area, and then Newcastle again through Wednesday afternoon. You can see as that low wobbles around, and interestingly enough, it doesn't really have that Fujiwara effect that does. It's sort of down here at this stage, but it's not as defined as the other three models. So it's just rotating around in some big massive mess that's out there. But you can see as it does start to rotate and tilt, really the winds retreat off the coast pretty quickly. And back into sort of low 30s, high 20s by sunset on Wednesday night. So thankfully the reprieve, and as it just wobbles around, and then we've got this secondary surge, which EC has had for period of time here, which is this secondary trough of this southeasterly surge coming, and there's that sort of small vorticity, but it's not really anything at this stage. You wouldn't even say this is a Fujiwara effect because there's nothing there in terms of the surface level, but you can see it actually is aiding in convection, or the winds squeezing together, and that's what's this trough backing into the coast. This is going to be interesting in terms of another sort of peak in potentially severe weather. You can see it really racing up into that south coast area, into the southern Illawarra, in the trough here, sort of pushing in Thursday, overnight Thursday, also overnight Wednesday into early Thursday morning. You can see it to start to weaken because you can see how the isobars now, the curvature of the isobars there is just pretty flat, as opposed to when you go back here, there's definitely a lot more of a bend in them here, which is where the trough is strongest. That normally indicates just, the strength of your trough when you have that sort of bend in your isobars like that. And you can see as it does fling around, you can see that sort of starts to sort of flatten out a bit. You can see there a little bit of a bend in them, so there's still a bit of trough, but you can see it still does amplify some potential for some pretty nasty weather again Thursday morning, which is what the Bureau did sort of flag in their outlook in terms of the severe weather, sort of damaging winds. You can see here, again, drags up that sort of very strong southwest southerlies, and because we're just the west of the system, it's probably going to be sort of southwesterlies or even southwesterlies, but nasty again into Thursday as that blob sort of passes by and then quickly then scoots off to northeast and away, and then of course massive Tasman low starts to take a hike and off towards New Zealand during Friday, and conditions will rapidly clear as that high builds in from behind the system. Yeah. All right. Well, let's have a look now at some of the rainfall, and we'll see. We'll start with EC because it's first up. As usual, we'll look at 24 hours. So we've got that's 12 hours. In fact, we might just do 12 hours. So you can see here those showers increasing overnight, according to EC anyway, as well, with Newcastle 50 mils, Taree 50 mils, but that's going to be pretty good news to those people up there who are expecting 300 mils. And so good sort of good showers there, but not really persisting much above the coast for us anyway. But we'll actually zoom in now. What are we doing? We don't need to be out there. And we'll look at those winds again from our perspective. Let's stay local now. So really, not penetrating much far into the west, but we'll then go and do the next 12 hours from 7 a.m. Tuesday, and we'll look at what the next 12 hours brings. So see again the system as it moves down. The next 12 hours after that, so only 20 sort of mil falls across the whole of the Hunter and that sort of stuff. So that make them pretty happy, and that reduces, I think, any sort of pressures on potential sort of riverine flooding there, or increases anyway. You can see the focus again. Some pretty good in 12-hour falls. You got 12 hours. You got 30 mils across basically most of the city basin. In the southeast, a bit higher, 44.5 mils there down in the Shire, and in the Wollongong it's probably going to be, of course, it's going to be the strongest because of that orographic effect. Of the Great Dividing Range as it juts out there along Saddleback and pushes out to the coast, catching those southeasterlies as it wraps around into the system. But again, not anything extraordinary in terms of rainfall-wise in 12-hour period, but still be wet and wild and windy. All right, let's go into now the next 12 hours. We'll go up to 7 o'clock Tuesday night, and that takes us into 7 a.m. Wednesday morning. Again, still some persistent rain, which is good in terms of that. So looking at, if my math is any good, probably about 60 to 70 mils for Tuesday into Wednesday, potentially, if that math works out. Definitely some massive falls here on that sort of exposed sort of escarpment, especially the southern facing stuff for the around Fox Ground on that southern side of Saddleback. They'll definitely see some good falls in that area there, but again, that won't influence any of the river system other than maybe the Shoalhaven. I don't think that's actually included in any flood threat advice. Definitely some good falls in the upper catchments here. We'll definitely get the creeks running, but whether it gets to that minor flood advice, I guess we'll see exactly what works out. All right, and then turning to next 12 hours, so we'll go to Tuesday 7 a.m. Wednesday 7 a.m. there, and to Wednesday 7 p.m. You can see basically The activity has disappeared. So not even, maybe it's just a chance for a very small coastal, like coastal shower, basically clear. Again, so those southern facing sort of escarpment sort of areas in the south coast will do better. Obviously, as the greatest focus is down there a bit more, and then we'll go from 7 p.m. Wednesday through to the next day, and we should start to see that kick around. We saw, yeah, here comes it near that we saw before, that bit of enhanced stuff into Thursday morning. So again, overnight Wednesday into Thursday, we should see some showers and sort of windy conditions return, but sort of nothing major in terms of falls, but up to 20 mils for most of us. Teens in the central coast, and sort of tens up into the Hunter. Again, that area in the south coast with that southern exposed sort of escarpment around that Knights Hill, Saddleback, sort of Fox Ground type areas will do better because it's just like a big scoop grabbing these winds as they blow up. And then pushing out into all of Thursday, you can see activity rapidly retreating out to Tasman, basically 5 mils or less, except for that sort of exposed area as that little trough rotates around and wraps around and catches the sort of Seal Rocks and Nelson Bay area, but not much other than that. And then, of course, Thursday, 7 p.m. into Friday, we should probably see it's pretty much clear. Yeah, nothing much. Conditions have cleared. All right, so we'll do basically Friday. We'll just do the whole period now. So we'll do it from right now, which is when the update is, 6 p.m, right through to Friday at the same time. And we'll give us just a global figure in terms of EC. So we can see here, Sydney, 110, 115 on the coast. Wollongong definitely doing better, 200 mils for Kiama, but that's right on the coast. I ain't going to put any pressures on any of those flood advice areas in that respect. Some good falls up into the upper catchment here. So 130 at Bargo definitely will flow into Warragamba. So they're definitely worth watching that if it does come off. Again, but up into the upper, I'm still surprised the upper Hunter's not included, because this has been consistently this area around here. But again, that's going to fall into the upper Hunter and come down through the Hunter. We're actually out through Nelson's Bay. I think that's Karoo River there. Is that the Karoo River there? I think it is, yeah. So they'll put pressures on those systems again. But thankfully for the people of Taree, not much at all. 60 mils is probably something they'll probably appreciate, but not worry about. So definitely EC is definitely focusing, and as I said, 200 mils in coastal areas, and there's definitely going to be some pressures on streams down here on this perspective, this area, but thankfully away from those mid-north coast areas where they're still recovering both psychologically and obviously physically in terms of a whole range of things. Not much there from some good falls though, so hopefully they come off. Definitely some good falls there, especially on the coastal Sydney. And good thing is it's pushing into that sort of inner west areas as well. So Blacktown there, 83 mils is pretty good. Even out to the west, 55, 60 mils out that way. Down into out to Camden, Campbelltown there, definitely some good falls there. So you can do Campbelltown's pretty around there, 100 mils at Campbelltown. Thomas out there at Campbelltown, won't worry about that so much. You'll be enjoying that. And good old lawn doctor Mr. Sharp at Camden there, 80 mils, nearly 90 mils out Camden way. And he'll be pretty happy about that. That'll get some lawns growing, I guess, in probably, 7 to 10 days. Not being a lawn doctor like his, I'm sure he can give us his prognosis. All right, we'll have a look at what the other models are showing now. I don't think they're going to be as wet. I think GFS might be, so we'll do it first and see what it's doing. In terms of it, Access might be a little bit wetter. All right, so we'll do the same thing again, so make sure we're consistent and fair, not just cherry picking, cough, cough. So the first 12 hours is from tonight through to 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. You can see, again, the greatest focus is going to be up in that hunting in the Central Coast, as you can imagine. 33 mils for GFS for us in some coastal areas, 35 mils. And the other good, interesting thing here about GFS is that it actually pushes that rain a bit further west. Now, whether that's a smoothing issue because it's looking at lower res, or generally that's what it's expecting, but still some nice falls tonight and overnight into early tomorrow morning. And of course, then we'll go from 7 o'clock tomorrow morning through to 7 o'clock that night, so 12-hour period. Again, some pretty decent falls, 70 mils on the coast for Sydney, 65 mils, and then backing around to that sort of 60 to 50s. Nice for GFS, so that comes off. Not as extreme down in the Illawarra, as you can imagine, because GFS didn't really have that sort of persistent convergence zone like EC did. Popping off now for the next 12 hours from 7 o'clock Tuesday night through to Does it jump an hour when it's going to be consistent anyway? To 7 a.m. Wednesday, you can see pretty dramatic easing of activity, as we sort of mentioned, as that low starts to wobble around and detach itself from the trough. You can see again that the south coast or north-south coast will actually be the greatest, and Illawarra will definitely do well. We'll only see probably maximum 20 mils in that period of time as the effects start to wane, kicking on now to 7 a.m. Wednesday through to 7 p.m. Wednesday, which is a 12-hour period. How is that 11 hours when it's 7 to 7? Come on, Windy, like that's 12 hours, unless it's just not counting the 1 hour, of course. Again, not much falls at all. Really back off to sort of 5-6 mils, and then obviously down here in the south coast, which is where that sort of greatest impact will be. And we did actually mention to you that we thought it would actually die off quite a lot. And here comes that secondary band that we sort of mentioned. You can see here, greatest impact is sort of around. Good to see a Goulburn. Shout out to Vanessa and out there who getting some good falls. I'm sure they'll be happy with that. And keep all the old Wallandilly and stuff going with good clean water coming through, and keeps our dam nice and topped up. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. But again, not much there at all for Wednesday for us. South Coast is definitely the focus. And let's pop into early Thursday morning now. I bet we're going to see it pretty dry. Yeah, in fact, we can probably drag that out for the rest of the time. I don't think we're going to see much now through to Friday as it disappears. So basically all over Red Rover. All right, let's have a check at access. So, icon will go to the 7-hour period to 7-hour period, a 12-hour period, which is what we've been doing to make sure it's accurate and fair. Okay, so we can see here icon. Of course, I think icon's going to be the driest out of all of them. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think that's a very wet signal. Some good falls up in that exposed northeast Hunter around Sea Rocks, Nelson Bay, Port Stephens, and sort of southern mid-north coast. Not unsurprising. You can see here basically falls under 20 mils basically along the whole coast, except for around Newcastle. Nice sort of 30s around there. Central Coast doing all right, between sort of 20 and 25. And popping off now into Tuesday from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. And we should see probably a bit more rain here, because we did notice that. Remember that low does retrograde back towards the coast, and easing in sort of the area. Some good falls still up there and there, but again, the lack of penetration into the west is interesting. And you can see here the Sydney coast does pretty good in terms of everybody. 63 mils to 55 mils, and then sort of rapidly tapering off as you head into the west, but still does push some falls to the west, which is good for them. They'll be happy about that. Some good falls also in Illawarra between 50 and 60 mils. Again, interestingly, the south coast, they're not doing as well as we saw with other models. All right, heading now into that period, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next day. You can see rapidly clearing up to maybe 20 mils on the coast of Sydney. Some falls at the back end of the range, which is good. Out in the west, the central plains, I think that's what they're called out there. Some light falls around, some up in the Barringtons there. And again, the south coast sort of getting the focus of that onshore flow from the low/trough or whatever it's going to be called, wobbling around. All right, let's go now to 7 a.m. Wednesday morning through to 7 p.m. And as I said, I flagged, I think said it's going to be pretty dry, and it's pretty dry. Just maybe a coastal shower at that. Not very heavy, very windy though, but that's about it. And pushing through now for 7 p.m. on Wednesday night and 7 a.m. Thursday, that sort of return trough / band or gravity wave or whatever it's going to be, just clipping this. Definitely doing better for that sort of, again, that south facing areas. Good to see Goulburn getting some good falls out that way too, but not much else anywhere else. Not really stuff to worry about. And we'll go into Thursday, 7 to 7, like we've been doing, and basically all over Red Rover, other than some scabby coastal showers, if that, and some of those outer bands as those scud flies past, decides to pay us a visit. And then really that's the end of the experience. Icon was that much drier signal. So what we'll do now is we'll check out the whole accumulated falls for Icon for that whole period of time. Same as we did, 7 to 7 to be consistent. There we go there. So 100 mils for the Sydney coast, which is still not too bad. So, I mean, at this stage, 3 models have got 100 mils for coastal Sydney. So that's going to be good. But again, it falls tapering off very quickly as you get past that sort of inner west area. Blacktown only 40 mils. It's going to put no pressure on any sort of streams or creeks or whatever it is from there. And again, the back of the Illawarra here, 40 mils, 50 mils. The coast, 100 mils, it's going to be good, but you can see it filters out pretty much there past the escarpment. Other than that little phallic sort of push in there to the back of Barrel and Mossvale. Some good falls down. That's definitely because of the wind's been forced up over that Saddleback sort of Knights Hill area there. But again, I can't see anything on the icon model that's going to really put any pressures on our riverine systems for us anyway. Some good falls up in that Hunter area as well, but nothing sort of massive there that's going to cause any sort of alarm. All right, last but not least, we will then take a look at the year-older Access and see what it has. We'll put that on 7 of 7 so we can get it ready to go as soon as I click on it. It's weird how it does. Anyway, all right, Mr. Access, give us your perspective. All right, so that went 8 to 8, of course. Wow. Okay, so Access has some pretty good falls on the coast for tonight, really between sort of early 40s and sort of 30s, basically across the whole of the coast area, including the sunny coast, Newcastle, and some of the other areas just a bit away from the coast, and you're doing sort of 20s, mid-20s to maybe low 30s, but again, still pretty decent on Access. Thank you so much for bestowing us that juicy falls. All right, let's do 7 to 7. We should start to see pretty significant upturn in rainfall here, you'd think, given what they looked at, but not much at all. Easing off in the Hunter and the northeast as well. Shout out to Hunter Weather up there. Hope you're all doing great. Again, 30s along the coasts. Not much down here at all. No reason to worry about any sort of riverine flooding there at all. But if I remember, Access was more a Tuesday night thing into Wednesday, wasn't it? So let's see if our memories are good. Okay, so we've got Tuesday night and Wednesday. Definitely some picking up around the that southern exposed great dividing range around Knights Hill, Saddleback Mountain. Definitely picking up that. You can see Kiama 67 mils, 40 mils in the Gong, 25 mils or an inch basically on the coast, all the way up to Newcastle. Nothing in, and not much in that sort of area as well. A bit of a rain shoulder effect. Some stuff out the west here, but nothing again that's really to worry about, to be honest. All right, let's go Wednesday, the 12 hours Wednesday, 7 to 7. Not much at all. Disappearing quite quickly. Some scuddy showers on the coast, that's about it. Of course, that southern area there, picking up some more and that southerly flow as it will. All right, let's go Wednesday night. 7 to 7, basically gone. Knights Hill, Saddleback, picking up some good stuff there. Foxground, those areas there will definitely do very well. Bundanoon, Robertson, be pumping, but that's about it. All right, well, let's go 7 to 7. Access has it dead as a door now. Gone. All right, let's kick into 7 p.m. Thursday through to Friday. Yeah, nothing, all gone. All right, let's do the extended outlook then and see what the accumulated falls are going to be on Access. Looks like it's going to be pretty dry, pretty low. Again, not much to worry, right? Put pressure on any sort of riverine settings there. Still some good falls though, like up to 100 mils on the coastal areas, coastal strips. Nice, be all happy with that. Massive falls, of course, around this area here, but again, that's going to flow basically out to sea. Back in, some of it into the back end of the Shoalhaven, of course, that'll flood down, but with not much else happening to the south of it. Shouldn't put too many pressures on that. Yeah, I still am a loss to see what they think is going to cause this. They must be running with EC, surely, but interesting. So, I mean, out of all the 4 rainfalls models we've seen so far, the coast definitely does, between 80 to 100 mils for sure over the next few days. So it's going to be sort of wet and wild on the coast. There's no doubt about that. But there's a little lack of penetration past that, is going to put not much pressure on anything other than the winds, of course, which is what we said all along, is going to be the greatest worry, concern for a lot of areas for this, especially for the areas that are still quite wet after the record, May rainfalls that happened. And even though June's been quite dry, with the lack of low evaporation, being in the middle of winter and being so cold, the ground is going to be still quite wet. So it's going to be a lot of sort of foliage damage and tree damage. So of course that raises risk of bigger trees sort of blowing over, especially on that coastal strip here. Some of those leafier suburbs, definitely concerns about big trees coming down. So shout out to our friends at the SES, who no doubt will be on high alert, ready to go out with their chainsaws and bits and pieces to rescue people as usual. All right, we might have a quick look at quick look at access C for tomorrow because it should be out enough. Because don't forget, it's only a very limited sort of period. And we can see here as far as it goes is there. So it gives us about, what's that, about 18 hours worth it is, or something like that. Not even that. You can see axis C does like some pretty good falls, especially on that coastal areas up in the Hunter, which is interesting that nothing else really picked it up. Its sister model axis G certainly didn't have that. You can see again the falls taper off quite significantly, even insofar as it doesn't get past much Botany Bay here in the city. But again, those coastal areas nearly up to 100 mils between tonight and early Wednesday morning, which is pretty much what everybody else said. Some massive falls down here in the Illawarra again. Thanks to that Great Dividing Range jutting out into the east out that. But again, most of that's going to fall and run out to the off the coast there and give Gerringong a bit of a flush out, no doubt. Maybe a bit of an inflow into the very far northern areas of the Shoalhaven catchment, but nothing concerning there. Let's have a look now at the winds, and we can see. Well, first of all, start with axis C because it's obviously up. And we'll see what it says in terms of winds, especially for us here in the metro area and on the coast. You can see here again, still sort of, and then here it comes bands of winds. You can see a sort of splotchy effect, and that's the impact of that sort of higher resolution, which I think is a 1.5 kilometers for axis C. SCY or SY, which is Sydney model, which is obviously a lot more higher res than any of the other models. And you can see here, definitely look at that really pretty sort of looking circulation center there, but sort of wobbling around and not doing much, giving Nelson's Bay a bit of a touch up there. Definitely some pretty strong, nasty winds here in terms of Sydney. And we see they're going to sort of, we see when they start, they're going to start early overnight, sort of 2 to 3 a.m. We start to see the coast getting some gustier stuff. And really by Tuesday lunchtime, we're going to start to see pretty consistent, strong, nasty winds. But again, across the whole of the Sydney area. So I'm definitely expecting that we're going to see most of Sydney under a severe weather warning from 8 o'clock tonight if the Bureau believe their own model. It's here you can see your own eyes, 40 knots and above is severe under the Bureau system. So, and you can see there's lulls, which is going to sort of, as the thing wobbles around, loses that inflow, and then basically dead Tuesday night after being hammered with winds. This is axis C's version, and then those winds will start to return, no doubt, as that upper system approaches from the west. As you can see, but that's as far as axis C goes. So let's have a look at EC in terms of sort of a zoomed in effect. So we'll go in here and we can see again pretty much consistent with what axis C was just saying, that we should start to see an increase. And you can see here axis C was actually coming more from the south, whereas EC is definitely coming more from the northeast. So that's an interesting twist altogether. But again, it does definitely likes to get those winds up into pretty nasty territory from lunchtime Tuesday, and then basically across the whole of Sydney. Like that's the whole of Sydney there is basically under 40 plus knots, which is severe. So it's pretty much EC and axis C are going hand in hand. So I expect the Bureau will be issuing, including the rest of Sydney, in that severe weather alert, no doubt tonight if they are running with this scenario, because you can see here stays under purple into Wednesday morning, and then starts to ease off again, but pretty savage winds in terms of that. And we get this kick up again Thursday as that band's gravity wave trough, whatever it is, flies past and gives the coast a bit of touch up, but doesn't push much into the west, and then away it goes on Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. So let's have a look at what GFS is saying. In terms of winds, we'll quickly skip through there. You can see again approaching from the northeast, a bit like EC. And don't forget GFS again, I remind you, is a bit lower res, so it's not going to have that sort of detailed effect as you're seeing, but it's still a whole swathe of the coast there. In fact, all of Sydney under that pretty severe wind. So again, I expect we'll see most of Sydney under the Bureau's severe weather warning from 8 o'clock tonight if they're going to be running with any of these scenarios. And if they're not, then they've got some different modelling that they're looking at. But again, there we go. EC drops it off. GFS drops it off pretty quick. And we'll quickly go into Icon. again, looking at these winds, don't think, just a reminder, those numbers you see under obviously the location names are wind speeds. So they're not temperatures or rainfall, they're winds. So you can see icon has the same thing, that's rapidly approaching from the northeast, but the winds will be southerly, but you can see just because of the bands extending towards the coast. Definitely Tuesday lunchtime is going to be like a key date wherever it is. And you can see, again, developing those pretty strong winds across most of Sydney, in fact, all of Sydney, and then just sort of right on that threshold for severe. So not as bullish as GFS or Axis C or EC were. And you can see the coast still getting smashed right through. And then, of course, we saw that clearing pattern into Wednesday, and then a bit of a wobble around towards that second part as it comes through there, with a bit of kick up on the winds sometime during Thursday, and then away she goes into Friday. And last but not least, we will look at Access. And surprisingly, it won't mirror what you saw in Access C. They tend to sometimes do things quite differently, which is fascinating. You can see here again, it does also pick up, winds are going to be picking up overnight, Tuesday, tomorrow morning. And then by lunchtime, mid-morning and lunchtime is when everything sort of starts to kick off. So we start to see these strong winds, and by the afternoon, we start to see those really nasty gusts. And again, the Bureau's own model has basically the whole of Sydney under pretty severe winds. Again, reminder, 40 knots plus is considered severe under the Bureau's category. And those sort of bands, as you can see, the coastal strip getting hammered. And then you can see that sort of pulses, they come and go, come and go. And that's just, as the low/trough, whatever it's going to be called, sort of wobbles around off the coast. You get these sort of gravity waves with these pulses of strong winds. You can see there's that secondary surge that we were watching before, just basically clipping the coast. But you can see why Axis itself is a lot drier than the other models in terms of keeping most of that sort of concentrated stuff well off the coast. The rain, that is, not the winds. So coastal strip, as we saw, going to do pretty well in terms of rainfall. 80 to 100 mils, probably 110, maybe even a bit higher. Again, but there's not much penetration inland from most of those model outlooks. Winds pretty nasty for the whole time. Anywhere between sort of that low 40s up into sort of mid 50s. I guess it'll then determine or depend upon exactly the arrival of that upper system, just how it interacts with that, and that Fujiwara effect that I showed you before. But those two lows sort of spinning around each other, or whatever they're going to be, whatever we're going to see out of that, whether it's the same low with just two cores, I mean, that's a possibility too. But all in all, it's still a very complex situation, as the Bureau puts it. Like, that's a nice little summary. All right, we'll quickly grab some questions out of some stuff, and then we'll get out of your hair so I can go and eat. Mr. Sharp, hello. Jessica, hello. Rachel, hello. Mr. EJ from Central Coast, hello. G'day, Sean. Funky Diva, hello. Hello, Dita, good evening. Love you. Reverend Malik, hello. Not sure what that said. You received advice for Corrine Creek and Dora Creek. Interesting. Okay, that's on the Central Coast, I'm assuming. Questions, I'll wait for invite. Smoking, no. Yet. Get down here. G'day, Mr. Well. Lovely to see you. We were talking about you last night, and you must have speak of the dead, and you shall appear. But we're talking about whether Sydney Airport would be closed Tuesday night, giving those winds, and I'm assuming that would be the case because those crosswinds will be pretty nasty. Although if they're more from the south, I guess they can still take off. But I think 50 knots is it? They'd be pretty struggling, I thought, imagine. But let us know in the comments, Mr. Well, if you're still around, because you're the aviation guru. More wind and rain, absolutely. I think that's the summary from this. Other than the coastal strip, will do pretty damn good, I think. But everywhere else, it's going to lack of penetration. Yeah, I know it's a lot easier for me too, Mr. Well. I can tell you that it's low latency. It has a lot of better functionality. It's actually been pretty damn good, I must say. Hats off to YouTube, whereas Facebook throttles that gives crap bandwidth, makes it look like it's me that's all sort of slag and lag and latency. It's actually Facebook, YouTube. Hats off to you. Nice and crisp. Yeah, what do you think? Hello, Cody. Love to see you too. And Mr. Well, just let us know in the comments what your aviation stuff says, because I'm assuming it's going to be closed. I'd imagine pretty for tomorrow afternoon if those forecasts come out for 50 knot plus going right across the runway and not really sort of down the runway. I'd imagine those crosswinds would be pretty chaotic and there'll be no plane taking off on that. But that's just my lay person's perspective. So it'd be interesting to see what you've said and that returns. Otherwise, yeah. You doubt they'll close it with 50 knot crosswinds? They closed it bloody a fart last time. We had these winds, if you recall, and they basically stopped all flights from about, what was it, 7 o'clock at night or something. It wasn't even as what this is going to be, which is pretty nasty. Anyway, I guess we'll find out what the relative airlines. I mean, they closed the other night, and they wasn't anywhere near as potentially strong as what it is now. Yeah, I guess we'll play it, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully, if it's not closed, Mr. Dine's relatives from wherever they're coming from yonder get to land before they do. So he gets to spend time with them, just in time for some Sydney fun, no doubt, whatever it is. Oh, the airline chose not to operate. Interesting. Okay, because I knew somebody who was actually on the flight, and they said that they were told that Sydney Airport had closed down in Melbourne, because they were flying from Sydney, Melbourne to Sydney, and they were basically, all the airlines told them that the Sydney Airport stopped them, like said that it was closed and they couldn't leave. So, bit of duck shoving in there by the good old airlines, by the sounds of that. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, well, there's no more questions. It's great to have this live chat too, because it makes it a lot easier to get questions answered than having to wait for it to suddenly appear on the old Mr. Zuck's channel. Sydney Airport doesn't like closing. Do you blame him? Loss of revenue. Macquarie Bank wouldn't want to lose 1 cent, especially since they've had so much trouble with all their execs over the past few months or so. All right, well, have a great evening. Thank you so much for your company. We'll be back in the morning. We'll do a update, hopefully about 7:30 or 7:45, depending on how much I've got to look at models overnight, how much they've changed. I'd imagine it's going to be more now casting, because it's pretty much useless. I think they're going to be given their 12 hours behind, and most of the system will be clearing out by lunchtime Wednesday if all the models we've seen so far are correct. Still am bemuddled and bewitched about why the Bureau have a flood threat advice out, but I guess they're just covering all bases. Again, for me, I think the key highlight about this is going to be winds. There's definitely going to be winds. Don't get me wrong, the coastal areas are going to do pretty well. It's going to be wet and wild in the coastal areas, but again, they don't impact many they don't impact many riverine systems, other than a few storm drains and maybe the Narrabeen Lagoon, which Mr. O'Callaghan out Freshwater Way might get some water frontage, which he's been wondering for, increase his property values, no doubt. Otherwise, right, so hello, lovely to see you too. Thank you for joining us. And I will catch you all in the morning. I'm going to say I'm just going to lock in a time 7:45, because that actually allows me time to get up for my ADH meds to kick in, actually help me focus and actually see the screen, but also then to review all the stuff that's going on, what the current stuff is, and without rushing and stressing and not worrying about putting out low quality stuff for you fabulous people. All right, 7:45 AM. See you, be there or be square. Link will be up in both on the Facebook page and Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. It is now time to play Sean's most favourite part of the night, no doubt, the dulcet tunes of the whatever it's called in B flat. I don't think it's B flat, but you know what I mean. Have a great evening. Thank you so much for your company, and catch you later.